What up, everybody? DJ Anubis with the Military Radio Podcast. Doing a new segment here on YouTube. It's called Into the Vault, where I dive into some of my music, CDs, vinyl, cassettes. Today will be CDs. Actually got inspired to do this from Necrotic Nick from Thralls of Metal, who's been doing his own show where he kind of goes through his collection of stuff that he's gotten either recently or had, or even past stuff. His last episode was really cool. A lot of great stuff he got, old classic material that one would think he'd already have, but it's tough. There's a lot of music out there. Can't always have everything. If I had all the money in the world, I would have all the music I wanted, but it's not always possible. You can also catch Nick doing collaborations with Crypt and Scully from Metalomania, so be sure to stop by and check out those shows as well. I have like a nice little stack here of stuff I'm going to go through. This is mainly stuff in my collection right now that is either kind of rare in terms of like out of print or part of a series, like if it's limited, or it might not even be records that I listen to a lot, but just stuff that I know that is either kind of revered or in my case, these are all CDs that I had at the time that they were released. So these are like the original OGs. They're not reissues and stuff like that. So let's get started. From 2014, some friends of mine, Condemned and Infected. It's technical death metal from the U.S., of course. Label is Lost Apparitions, and some of my favorite tracks on this are Deny Existence, The Hosting, and Pillars of Creation. In fact, this is called Deny Existence, just for you know. At one point when I was catching these guys live, guitarist founder Chris Keller, they had played a version of Cryptopsy's Graves of the Fathers. It doesn't appear on this, unfortunately, and I know that the band is kind of on a hiatus. This is the only thing they've done so far as far as full lengths. They've had some demos previously. I did talk to Chris at MDF this year because he was there with his lady and they were just chilling and enjoying the music. But he says they are working on new material, and I don't know when it's going to be out yet. I'm not sure he knows yet, but they are working on new stuff apparently. Also, if you don't know, Henry Everett, the drummer from Nomos, plays on this record, and I think he's still playing with the band on their new stuff coming up. I just don't know when. Great drummer, great dude. So if you like what he does with Nomos, you'll enjoy this. It's pretty good death metal stuff there. Weirdly enough, when obviously because I'm friends with the guys and they were giving me this as I did an interview with them probably way back when this came out. I went on Amazon, believe it or not, and this was selling for almost $100. So I don't know if they still have this stuff in print for the band themselves, but you probably could get it from them if they still had copies of it left. But apparently Amazon, they're whatever they got, they're selling it for almost $100, and it was used at $100. So that's some crazy shit, right? Next up is a band that appeared at MDF this year. In fact, they were doing this record, was Divine Eve, As the Angel Weeps. This came out in 1993. They're a doom death metal band from the U.S. Also, my favorite tracks in here are like A Somber Blossoming, Soul's Flight, As the Angels Weep. It's only 4 songs, but the band disbanded shortly after this record for a little while, and then got back together in 2010. And of course, they played MDF this year. It's kind of like one of those special things that MDF does when they bring some of these bands back out of, or when they come back out of whatnot. The music itself consists of slow tempos with crushing death metal riffs. Has a little bit of a dirty approach, but isn't very overly complex either. I rarely get into this record, and it's become a rare piece for metal collectors over the years. So I suppose I hold on to it for that purpose. But it isn't something I listen to that often. Next up, Detachment. Suspended in Stone. This is one of two CDs I'll be talking about today that I've actually written kind of like a short review for on my blog that I used to do. So if you ever hunt that down, you can always find my blog where this has been mentioned. They are progressive death metal of the United States. The label is Rock and Roll Records. And my favorite tracks off this record is Open Your Heart, Septic Reality, Blood Mirror, Severed from Flesh, and they do a fucking awesome cover of Incarnated Solvent Abuse from Carcass. The cool thing about this record is the fact that on the song Blood Mirror, it's kind of weird because the first 3 or 4 tracks on this record kind of stay with the traditional prog death sound. Like it's very straightforward, very good stuff. But then once Blood Mirror hits, it starts getting a little more experimental. In fact, Blood Mirror, there's a portion in there that has almost like a jazz vibe about it with the guitar playing and some of this other stuff going on in it. So it really changes up a little bit, and then the rest of the record kind of follows that format. So they kind of just start branching off into some other shit. If there's a drawback to this record, it's lyrically, it's simple. In presentation, it kind of holds the band back from getting any kind of notoriety from it. But and this is the only record they put out. They split up after this, which is weird because I think that if they had stuck around and stuck with it, they probably would have really kind of grown as a band and would have gotten much better. Even though I still like this album a lot, so I don't want to diss it in that way. Like I said, if you can get over kind of more simplistic riffs, I mean, this was in 2000 that this came out. And I'll tell you, just for the Carcass cover, the price alone is great for that because they integrate some keyboards into that. And it's not like overdone, but it's just enough to make it different for their own, and it's really, really good. Like it's one of the better covers you'll find out there when it comes to this band. Next up, 2014, Dying Out Flame. Shiva I can't pronounce Rudra Stakam. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing that right. It's techno death metal from Nepal. The label is Extreme Music. My favorite tracks on this, of course, the title track, Eternal Mother of Great Time, and Trinitra Dari are some of the best ones on here. There's like about 6 songs on this. The band blends like spiritualism and Hinduism that you can immediately feel in the influence throughout the record. So it's a little bit different. It sometimes throws people off when bands get like really creative in that manner, especially death metal bands. But I like the fact that they kind of explore the sound a little bit in there. And if you can appreciate stuff like that, you'll actually like that record a lot. So Dying Out Flame, if I can get it right here. There we go. So check them out. When I was in the chat with Necrotic Nick during his episode yesterday, one album that got brought up, and it reminded me of an album that I own originally from the day. Like I've actually had people in the past like offer to buy this off of me. I didn't want to give it up. Is Disembowelment, Transcendence into Periphery, 1993. It's a death doom metal band out of Australia, and they're off of Relapse Records. I have actually some of the stuff in here is from Relapse, a big time period in the late 90s when we was buying through Relapse. This is really before the internet took off and became its own thing where you can kind of buy either from the band straight or other labels and people who were selling CDs outright. So some of my favorite tracks, in fact, my favorite track ever is your Prophetic Throne of Ivory coming off that record. But there's also Night Side of Eden, Burial of Ornans, and Spirits of the Tall Hills. It's very musically, it's just so painful and depressive. And music's just so suffocating at times, and it intensifies with each listen that you give to this band. I think it's the only full length they have as a band. It's one of those bands where they just didn't do anything after. They kind of came back. They had some compilation records in 2005 and 2020, respectively. I know that some of the members like Paul Mazzotti and Matthew Scarju, they went on to play with Iverlock. So if you've ever heard that band, they're fucking great too. So just check them out. Iverlock's very good too. And then I think guitarist Jason Kells went on to play with Acheron. And actually, if you saw my recent unboxing from Metalhead Box, I actually got a shirt from Acheron. So next up, out of Poland, is the Squirrel Discoveries 2001. Technical progressive death metal. The label is Empire Records. Not to be confused with the movie, just so you know. I really, really love the artwork here, and I actually did an actual review under the name Evil Speak on Metal Archives for this record way back when. So if you ever want to check that out, go ahead and do that. Although I think my review writing is not the greatest in the world because I can't always really explain what I want to say about something. So that can at times be a problem because I can't really, I know what I want to say. I just can't always say it the way I want to. And I'm sure there's people out there that can agree with me on that kind of stuff. Favorite tracks are Kill All of Them, Sacred War, Nightmare, True Lies, and Guitar Explosions, which is a great instrumental. I can't recommend it enough. So if you're fans of like stuff like Heathen's Guitar Harmony off of Victims of Deception, the Guitar Explosions has that kind of vibe. Like it's just great guitar work. And the funny thing is, like, you know, these guys play a lot of like melodic guitar as well as catchy riffs, and solos are just kind of really amazing. Now, their follow-up is an album called Inheritance, and that's also a very solid record, which I highly recommend. And there's a song on there, if you ever want to check any kind of particular song out from Inheritance, I would say the Pure Formality. And the solo work in there is just amazing. Like, one of the descriptions I can only give was, at the time, if you're familiar with Joe Satriani's solo work, it has like a bit of an emotion and feeling in it. Like, you know, there's guitarists that are just like very flashy and wankery, like Dream Theater or whatever. But then there's other solo guitarists that have some sort of like emotional vibe that they almost sing with the guitar. Sometimes like ballads or whatever. When I hear the solo in Pure Formality, it's very much in that vein. Like it just stood out to me and just is so good. Like I can't really explain it, but you can listen to a song and you just get a good vibe about it, and it hits the heartstrings and everything else. So Pure Formality off Inheritance, it's probably on YouTube. I'm sure it is. Just go look it up. Again, with these guys with Discoveries, and most of their work is lyrically, it's not super thought-provoking. It's a little bit simplistic in presentation, but the music more than makes up for it all. Like, they're really good band, and definitely highly recommended. Okay, so now we're moving on to Frederick Thirsty's Special Defects, Soul Niger Within, 1999. I cannot really state what songs I really like on this because I have not listened to this in quite some time. I would have to go back through it. You know, the thing about when I was growing up and when I was hitting the record stores a lot before the internet really broke and you were able to kind of preview stuff, I was kind of just going through and just grabbing different shit. There's another record I'll get to soon that I haven't really listened to in a long time. But if you're not familiar with Frederick, he is one of the guys from Meshuggah. So obviously that kind of got my interest into this. However, this is more experimental DJ from Sweden. Labels Metal Mind. Actually, this was Relapse, so probably came from Metal Mind originally, but now from Relapse. I can't really say a whole lot about it. Like I said, I haven't really listened to it in a very long time, but it is a rare piece. Like this is another one that I went to look up on Amazon, and like it's selling for $100, so it's probably not much print. I don't know if you can get this maybe from Relapse. I'm not sure, but apparently it's still a rare commodity, and it's because it's just like it's a one-off. I don't think Frederick ever did anything else with this project. So, and there's like a shit ton of songs. It's well over. It's about 27. It looks like 28. So obviously some tracks are probably shorter than others, but I'd have to go back through it just to figure out what he was trying to do on this. I don't know. Maybe some other you, when you comment on this, will know a little bit more how you feel about this if you've heard it. Let's see, and I'll just give you a quick look at the artwork there for that one. Next up, I'll probably get like either love or hate for this. But, it's kind of funny. I'm watching Nick do his thing. And, he has records that he goes through that he says that, generally maybe most metal fans don't care for, but he really likes. And I think everyone's kind of like that. As metal fans, we have records that we can't help but like. And some other people may hate it. Geezer's Plastic Planet. This is another one that on my blog that when I wrote the Detachment review, I gave a little short review on this one as well. Released in 1995. They're like a sludge industrial groove metal band from the U.S. It was released on Sanctuary Records. And of course, if you haven't really, if you don't know much about the band, it's Geezer Butler's project. I used to play with Sabbath and everything. So this was his first record with this particular project. And the guest vocalist on this was Burton Bell from Fear Factory. So I grew up a big Fear Factory fan, especially in the early 90s to early 2000s. I still like Fear Factory, although I know Burton has currently left the band and they're still going to go on. So I'm not sure who Dino and company have gotten to replace Burton. I think that's going to be a tall task, but it can be done. There's plenty of great singers out there, so it'll be interesting what he does. But at the height of the 90s, when right around the time, they released Soul of a New Machine in 92, I think it was 95 when Demanufacture came out. So Fear Factory was just starting to really become a thing. Especially with at the 90s, it was like Burton's height of his vocal power, really, as far as singing. Chances are this album was more like a cash grab in terms of what they were trying to achieve. I've seen people mention the reviews on this as like kind of like a new metal approach. I don't really hear the new metal in there at all. I can't say it's an easy listen. If you wanted to play some tracks on mainstream radio, it probably wouldn't hurt people's feelings in terms of like, it's a separate thing from like Cannibal Corpse or some shit like that. So it's easier to get into with this record than anything else in the metal genre. Even probably more easy than Fear Factory at times, especially off Soul in the Machine was a lot rougher than Demanufacture. They're not breaking any new ground here at all. But I think it's one of these albums I really, really enjoy. Some of my favorite tracks are Catatonic Eclipse, Dry Boy Shooting, The Invisible, and the Detective 27, as well as a very eerie and creepy seance fiction, which I've always loved that song. It's so dark, and the way that Burton uses his voice in that song is just scary. Like, it's just so good. But it just depends on what you like in terms of metal in general. Whether or not you can get into that particular record. But it's one of those picks that I really just love. Like I've heard some of Geezer's other albums in this particular project that I didn't really care for because Burton was never a part of it. But it just depends. I really like Burton as a singer, so it's probably why it stuck with me. I don't know. The other band I was going to tell you outside of Frederick Thorndall's Special Defects was, I'm probably going to butcher the shit out of this, so many apologies. Cariboujin, Saburgi, and I don't know if I even pronounced that right. This is a side project of Dan Sueno, the mighty Dan Sueno. And this is avant-garde doom metal from Sweden. This was released in 2001 off of Relapse Records. I don't have any favorite tracks per se because it's only 3 songs. And again, this is another one that I haven't really spent a lot of time going back through. Over the years, the last 20 years, I've been able to grow as a listener. When bands were doing, like I remember, just side story, growing up in the early 90s, grabbing Force of Equilibrium from Cathedral. And I didn't really know what doom metal was. All I remember reading, because it was shortly after I had picked up Napalm Death's Harmony Corruption, that I said I read about Dorian, who used to sing for Napalm. And he was in Cathedral. So I'm fully going into this kind of expecting it might be someone like Napalm Death. It wasn't. I didn't hate it. Songs like Soul Sacrifice were fucking amazing, right? But it was a far cry, and I didn't really know what doom metal was. So as far as like the growth as a listener, I'm just kind of like, I don't know if I'm really feeling it overall compared to the heavier stuff that I was listening to at the time. So obviously with this, this is what, 2001. So I'm still like kind of a newbie. I was just also getting into a lot of black metal around then. So this kind of stuff was still just stuff I wasn't really paying much attention to. So when I got it, listened to it, I was like, I don't know what's going on here. But obviously Dan Sueno, who's been tied to projects like Edge of Sanity, Bloodbath, and so on. He has like a slew of stuff that he's been a part of. Very good artist. Some of his solo work is great too. But this is a lot different than the straightforward death metal stuff that you were kind of used to from Sueno. And I'll have to get back into it in terms of like discovering what it's about and maybe if it clicks with me or not. Sometimes artists get so weird with what they're doing that they kind of lose me a little bit with that. But yeah, that's the cover for it. It's a little grainy, but that's the project from 2001. There's no longer active. He's never done anything else with this project that I've seen. It does have a mixture of prog and a little bit of jazz in there. But again, it's one of these rarer pieces that are in my collection. I don't know if it's even selling on Amazon for anything or whatever, but it's just, whenever people look through my stuff, they're kind of like, what is this? And I've never heard of it. And so it brings up an interest of topics for some people, which is cool. It's a good discussion starter. All right. Moving on to the self-titled, or I think they also call it Origin, Kraslik. It's a death metal band from Canada. This was released in 1999 off of Maquival Music. I think I pronounced that right. Favorite tracks of this, Oceanonox is definitely the first single I ever heard, and which made me want to buy it. Eternal Dance, Sailing to the Origin, and Nant are also tracks on here that are very good. The cool thing about this record is none of the songs are really the same. This band does a lot of different things. They throw in some clean singing, and not every song sounds the same. So that's really why they get kind of experimental in that way. It's not overdone, but it's just not every song sounds the same. They have a lot of nice use of keyboards in it. And the experimentation, as I said, experimentation doesn't get very wankery with it. So it's not like getting too crazy, but they do try different things. Um, One of the things that hurts this record probably is the production value. It's not a very good production on it, so sometimes when you hear the singer growling, you can't really hear him because the production is just so bad. I don't know. I think this was the only album they ever put out, but it's interesting. It's one of those again. It's one of those rare pieces that I have that one-offs that no one else really has or talks about much. All right, so now this is going to be a lot of fun here. Mythic. Oops. See. Morning in the Winter Solstice. This is a mini little CD. 3 songs, the EP. Back from '93 when I got it. I actually got it at Tower Records in Annapolis at the time. Didn't know anything about the band. I just remember seeing the 3 chicks on the back and thinking, wow, this should be interesting. Dana Duffy, of course, on guitar and vocals. And I really fell in love with it. It's kind of funny because, again, you know, when you think of bands like Mortician, where they're a little more straightforward, even though this is more death doom metal, again, Relapse Records, they do it's really straightforward, but it's really, really good because it's suffocating in the sound and heavy, like just depressive heavy on your chest, almost like. So I mean, they do a great job of playing on here, and it's like you wouldn't expect that. And the growls from Dana are just nuts. Like, I'm like, it's still in disbelief. I think it was probably one of the earlier times that I'd heard a female do those kind of vocals. Like, this is, you have to think, this is long before I heard Angela from Arch Enemy, or even, I can't remember the singer from Holy Moses. Like, I didn't even get to Holy Moses till later either. So this was the first time that I actually heard female doing those type of like vocals. I'm like, this is impressive shit. I love the entire thing. All 3 songs are great. Again, this band split up after this. They did do an anthology in '98, and then I think they've done a couple splits in 2005 and 2007. They still are kind of active on Facebook. They still release merch from this album. I do think Dana and the other girls went on to do other projects. I don't know which ones. I didn't really research that part of it. I think I recall Dana was doing other stuff after this band. But whenever I talk with metalheads about, you know, classic material, Mythic comes up a lot in terms of that. So I'm very proud to like actually own this from back in the day. All right. Progressive death metal out of the UK, 2011. Tillanas, The Wasp Keeper. Great music. UOG Records, or usually media, excuse me. Favorite tracks, Nanta, The Portrait of Fortune Worth Its Disguise, Mezzanine, Penetralium, and Antiphon. I discovered these guys, I believe, through Facebook at the time. And I ended up befriending Hal Sinden, the singer guitarist, on Facebook, and I talked to him here and there. Like, he's pretty active on Facebook, and you know, we're not. It's not like we hang out or anything, but we are friendly. I've been friends with him since the release of this record. They released an EP a couple years later. Haven't done a full length since. They still show as active, so I'm kind of hoping at some point they do put a new record out. Extremely talented. One thing that Tillanas will kind of remind you of, there's a couple other UK bands that you might be familiar with, Rannoch and Akercocke. Tillanas shares a bit of a similar vibe to those bands, like mainly more with Rannoch and Akercocke. The only thing that kind of reminded me with Akercocke with Tillanas was they like to wear suits or the vests and the ties, and their presentation of their playing is similar to what Akercocke was doing back then. But sound-wise, they're closer to Rannoch, and which is a really good band. If you haven't heard Rannoch before, it's sort of like this hybrid death metal with progressive elements. with a touch of gothic undertone. So, as I said, I haven't really done a full length in quite a while, but hopefully they get around to doing a new record because they are really good and really talented. But life's funny. It throws different things at you, and sometimes bands can't either get the funds or the time because you have to have day jobs, right? Because unless you're making a living at this, which most metalheads don't, you have to work. So, water time. All right. All right. Next up will be an interesting act for sure. Velvet Cocoon's Genevieve. And I don't know if I can pronounce that right, so apologies if I did. So yeah, around 2004, I would say from 98 to about 2007, I was really on this black metal kick. Now, 98 was the first time I really even heard black metal. My first two black metal records. It's, the 90s had become kind of slow despite some of the more underground bands that I just wasn't aware of. So like most of the main death metal bands and thrash bands that I grew up with were either changing sounds. So you had like Slayer kind of going into more mainstream direction. Then you had Slayer, again, Slayer doing collaborations with rap artists, not dissing them, just saying that was sort of the product of the time. But you saw Napalm Death doing stuff that was experimental with like Curse to Crawl, which is a little bit of a bit rap hybrid type thing. Even Obituary got into it with Obituary of a World Demise. So these bands that you grew up with were trying to incorporate themselves into what was going on in the scene of the time as far as like mainstream. There were clearly underground bands that were still doing Overkill stayed, basically the same. But I'd always been kind of shied away from the black metal stuff because I didn't know much about it other than the fact that it dealt with a lot of paganism and occult and Satanism and stuff like that. And I didn't really understand it. So I didn't know if I really even like it. But I kept reading in the magazines at the time about two particular bands that were being brought up and talked about a lot. One was Emperor. The other was Dimmu Borgir. And the albums at the time I got in 98 were Anthem to the Welcome at Dusk, and as well as Enthroned Darkness Triumphant from Dimmu. So these were like the albums that were like the hot items at the time. So I was like, I went into, believe it or not, I went to Best Buy. They actually had them. I said, well, fuck it. I'm going to give both these a whirl and see what happens. Immediately fell in love with both records. A little bit more with Dimmu because it was a little easier on the ears than Emperor was for me. But I loved the way the Emperor had incorporated some of their atmosphere and the keyboards and whatnot. Same with Dimmu. But again, Dimmu was a little more straightforward with their presentation on that record. But that was sort of the launching pad for me to just start diving into black metal, and I was just listening to all sorts of stuff, whether it was Beherit, Dark Throne, Mayhem, etc., and then just even more newer black metal projects. That's how I got into stuff like Summoning or Marduk and other stuff like that. So I was just trying so many different things, and it's like some things I liked, some things I didn't. Velvet Cocoon came along in 2004 off the label of Full Moon Productions, and again being highly talked about as a record. So I think I found like clips online. It might have been, I think there was like one single, Avalon Polo, which is a great track that I listened to. But you had Fauna on the Floor, P.S. Nautical, and of course the title track. And so, but what ended up happening with this band was there was a controversy because one thing that I see even now is some artists in black metal, especially the solo guys who do all the work, is sometimes they'll put out 2 to 3 albums a year. Like it's really interesting they can kick out that much material. But sometimes I wonder if it's you're not spending too much time with it. So I'm kind of one of those people that, yeah, I don't want you to take 10 years to bring me an album, but I'd rather have quality over quantity. But it doesn't mean that you can't do quality stuff if you do more than one record, but it just became a thing. And I noticed that Velvet Cocoon was starting to put out like a record almost every few months. But then I had started reading that I guess the artist in Velvet, Josh, had plagiarized some other artists and put it out there as his own. Now, there's two ways to look at this, because Josh apparently, and this is his statement, was, and on the subject of Velvet Cocoon, the band is a total fraud. Nothing about it holds any importance. How the Last Day demo isn't even us. It's Miranda Lehman from Portland. Dizzy isn't us. It's my violent ego. Nothing is us. North Sweet was recorded in 3 hours and sold to a fake label who paid us enough for rent and substances. Drugs, I guess. That's why it's so terrible. We're utter bastards. We have no respect for anything. Now we're beginning the campaign to show just what we've done. We're walking examples of what far too many drugs will do. They make you crave havoc. They make you want to turn the world upside down while laughing like a maniac. So basically, he'd come out and said that they were just a sham all the way around. Now, they're not the first to do this. We know a guy from 5 or 6 years ago, and I can't remember the band name that he was under, but he did this shit on YouTube where he was playing all the instruments. He set up tour dates in Europe and was guaranteed ticket sales. Like, he didn't have to sell them himself. He was guaranteed ticket sales, for which he never delivered. Like, he would play between like maybe 1 or 2 people. So he had scammed a bunch of people doing that. This is kind of like that. The only real difference here was the music that the other guy was playing was actually his material. Granted, this album is supposedly them. So this is legit stuff here, just to be clear. But there was other stuff that they were going out there promoting as their own work with their logo and everything that wasn't. And so it created this shitstorm that came back on them. But now they're basically saying, yeah, we were fucking with you all, man. We just wanted to see if people were paying attention. Whether or not that's true, or whether or not they're just trying to escape a culpability for that, because like I don't even know if there were any lawsuits brought against them for that or not, because that's really going over the deep end. That'd be like me being a musician and taking Cannibal Corpse to try and make my own work, and then selling it to people. Now, granted, I think mostly at the time, this was a big time when downloading was a big thing, and as far as like illegal downloading. And so I'm sure that people were just like taking it off the web and saying, hey, new Velvet Cocoon. And it's really not them. So, but like I said, this particular record, I'm about 99% sure it's them. Like, from everything I've read, this is actually a legit record by those guys. I went back and listened to this before I did this show, and I have to say, like, it doesn't really hold up for me, just because, like, I think now I'm really kind of over black metal in most part. It's very rare when a black metal band will stand out to me now. Usually, if it's black metal that I like, it's not the traditional stuff. It's either like progressive Viking black metal or black speed, black thrash, black death. Those I still kind of gravitate towards more than the traditional stuff that you would hear, as NECA would call it, the trash can lid banging. So when I was listening to his record, like, I can remember why I liked it back then, because I was always going for the black metal ambient kind of stuff that had atmosphere and like a gloomy feel. Like, I kind of like would just chill out, because sometimes we get like a real weird looking fog out in Maryland, especially depending on where you are. And so sometimes it was cool just to go outside in the wooded areas and fog and listen to music. And something like this album would be great for that, because it's really dirty and fuzzy. Some of the things they got going on with their equipment is just very interesting, and how they created that sound. And the songs all kind of flow in together. So yeah, it's a very dirty, fuzzy type, right? And you can tell by the cover here and I'll kind of blow it up over here. How it looks, it's like this would be perfect for this type of setting if you live in areas like this. So it's your atypical black metal album cover, the black and white, whatnot, and the fog and the forest. Something created by Immortal, pretty much way back when. But yeah, it's just one of those that I have in my collection that I just don't want to get rid of because of the importance or controversy that it created for the band back then. So it's just one of those things that I like having in my collection. And finally, I have it's basically a split between 4 black metal bands. Haven't listened to it in years. Again, this is probably more of the traditional black metal stuff. And it's called Lead Us into War and Final Glory. Now, it has Allfather, Nebron, Hordes of the Lunar Eclipse, and Gnostic. And this came out in 2002. The bands apparently are all from Canada. Dark Horizon Records for this, just so people know. Again, no favorite track currently. They do have quite a few on here. But the biggest thing about this record and why I hold on to it is some time after I got it, I didn't realize at the time that I bought it. This is, again, I was going out just buying everything black metal, just so I wanted to kind of immerse myself in it and see what bands stuck and which ones didn't. But I don't know if you're going to see it on here or not, but right there. Basically, this is number 243 out of 1,000 that were made of this CD. So again, this is a collector's item for me, if nothing more. I'm not going to say that the music's bad. Again, I haven't listened in a while. I have to go back and see if there's anything on. But because I've kind of grown away from the black, traditional black metal stuff, I just don't know how often I'll listen to this. But I'm just a sucker for stuff that's unique, and in this case, this is one of these items that is unique in my own collection. So, yeah, that's about it. I might do some vinyls down the road, or cassettes, or more CDs, but I wanted to give you guys an idea of some of the stuff I have in my own collection. Again, thanks to Nick for inspiring me to do a video like this. These are all original at the time that I bought them. They might have been maybe, there might be a couple in there that I bought maybe a year after they were released, just because you don't know exactly when they're coming out. But none of these are like remasters or reissues or anything like that. So hope you all enjoyed the video. I'll try to bring you more stuff down the line. Of course, if you haven't seen by now, we released a new Hordes of Chaos podcast yesterday, or today, excuse me. I did it last night, but it's out today. And excuse me. We have a sound bites clip from our Obi-Wan Kenobi review that we did on the podcast. So if you just want to listen to the Obi-Wan review through the sound bites video that we did, then it's not like a video thing here. It's just audio from the podcast, but it's up and ready to go if you want to check it out. Later tonight, live chat on 8:00 p.m. Eastern. We're gonna have Derek from Flick Snacks and Knickknacks guest hosting with us. It's just a general chat about entertainment and music. We'll be talking about new movies and TV shows we've seen that we liked. There may be spoilers, but look, you just come at your own risk there with that. Music wise, we're probably gonna talk about metal and rock. I don't know what Derek's been listening to lately. We're gonna find out. We're going to talk about some of the stuff that we've liked this year so far. And we're going to have you all in the chat to come check out and talk with us about it. If you have any questions, we'll be glad to answer some stuff. We'll try to keep up with that as well and enjoy talking with y'all. This will be our first real live chat, live. Like you're all here chatting on this, but this has already been pre-recorded for you all. I just wanted to be able to test the waters, let you look at this, and then see what you all have to say about the records that I showed you and any recommendations you might have as well, because I I'm like a sponge. I love to soak up a lot of metal. I do it every week when I preview music for our podcast. Go to metaltavernradio.com. You'll see our latest podcast as well as the 24/7 live radio. And we now have a merch shop as well. And you can find that at metal-tavern-radio-merch store and Shopify. So really, if you just go to shopify.com and search Metal Tavern Radio, you'll find our merch shop. So we have some cups, stickers, shirts, as well as keychains, bottle openers. And for those of you that kind of saw me trying to figure out how to do my cleanup cruise for reptile and spider enclosures, the isopod and springtail mixes, I am selling that on there as well. Don't fret about the price. You have to understand, like, if you buy an 8-ounce container of cleanup crew from me at $45, it's because that's what the going rate is for those. So, not trying to rip you off, but that's the going price. Like, I can't do anything less than that. But if you have reptiles and spiders and you have bioactive enclosures, you want to do cleanup cruise for that, I have like 9 freaking master cultures going, so I have plenty to go, and they will be alive when they get to you. I can't send out of the U.S., of course. It has to be within the U.S., just because they have to be there in a couple days. But yeah, even if you're not interested in it, you just want merch, go for it. We appreciate it heavily. We don't charge for a lot of stuff that we do, so really any kind of money that we get via the podcast and the station, everything is through merch. So it'd be a great thing if you guys can just show us a little love there and buy something. Doesn't matter what it is. Again, y'all, thanks a lot for tuning in and checking this out. As this is going, I'm going to read what everyone's saying about it and hope that you guys enjoy it. All right. Thanks a lot, all. Peace. Keep it fucking metal. Talk at you later.